Welcome everyone to another episode of What's Working in E-commerce. I'm your host, Egan Heath. I own Caravan Digital. We're a digital marketing agency for direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands. Today, I'm bringing you another expert in the e-commerce space. I have Brandon Amoroso. He's the founder and president of a leading e-commerce agency, Electriq, with a Q, and he built the business to oversee more than 55 brands, 45 team members in just 3 years before Drinks.com acquired it this past April. Brandon, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
So I think people would be curious kind of about your history here. You led this very successful agency, you grew it so fast, and now you're involved in the Shopify app. Tell us a little bit about that path and what you're up to now.
Yeah, so I started Electriq while I was going to school at USC. It was just myself freelancing in and around the LA area for like small makers and artisans, 1 to 2 person companies who would have a Shopify store, made a cool product, but didn't really know what they were doing online. So I did that for about a year, sort of by myself. And then I had a choice right before graduation, like, is this something that is actually gonna be able to support me or not? Fortunately, I decided that it was going to be something that would support me. And so I was able to hire 1 full-time team member at about like April 2019. And then for the past 3 years, have just been scaling the agency and refining and learning so many different things. Like, I didn't have any traditional agency experience, so a lot of it was trial by fire. And now we're really in a strong place, though, where we have our battle scars, but we know what we're truly good at, and everything from our messaging to our value prop. Like, that's the culmination of the past 3 years of sort of testing and learning and figuring out what it is that we truly do best. And then I've always been very interested in the software side of things. The agency is a lot easier to start, though, because you can bootstrap it. You're selling your services right away. It's just a completely different business than a software side. So when this opportunity presented to get acquired by a software company that was in the works of launching their own Shopify app, it basically allowed me to get the best of both worlds. Still have the agency as like the learning ground, staying up to date with everything happening in the Shopify ecosystem, but then to get to jump in with this team, who is a sizable company, has a long track record, but doesn't have the Shopify experience, nor have they ever had a Shopify app. And to get to be the one to lead that charge was super exciting. So that's basically how we got to this point.
Yeah, congratulations. And I see you're a Gen Z entrepreneur. We'll talk about that as well. You may be the youngest person I've interviewed on this. So congrats on all your growth and success, and we're excited to watch you. I'm on Drinks.com, and I just see Drinks powers e-commerce alcohol. So that Shopify app sort of enables, is it the compliance side of it? What does it allow vendors to do if they're selling alcohol through Shopify?
Yeah, so for the app specifically, and it might be helpful to give you a brief context on Drinks and how they got to this point. So around like 2013 is when they first started operating their own direct-to-consumer wine brand called Wine Insiders. They do about anywhere from like 6 to 7 million bottles a year shipped across the United States. And because of that, there's a lot of scrutiny when it comes to the compliance and tax side of things. So they built their own internal engine in-house to power that. Fast forward about 4 or 5 years to 2018, which we'll call like phase 2 of Drinks, is when they took that product and externalized it for unlicensed and licensed retailers. So unlicensed being like a Macy's or a Thrive Marketplace, brands that are already selling online but don't have the ability to sell wine online. So getting them up and running with their own wine programs. And then licensed retailers like a Sam's Club or a Kroger or other sort of Fortune 500 retailers of that nature, powering their ship-to-home wine programs. Phase 3 is where we're at now, which is the app. So we took the app, modified it a little bit to be able to support the tax and compliance needs of wineries. And there's about 13,000 wineries in the US. And historically, alcohol is just an industry that has been underserved when it comes to technology because it's extremely complicated. Like, there's each state down to the zip code has its own rules and regulations around what can and cannot be shipped. There's like, if you're in a certain zip code, you might have a volume limit per store that you order from. So like, I can't order more than, 3 liters of wine from a store in X period of time. And if that store does in fact send me more, that's technically illegal. It's quite the rabbit's hole. So the app powers real-time tax and compliance on Shopify for wineries, and it's actually the only real-time compliance solution in the marketplace, Shopify or otherwise. So like if you were going to go through checkout, let's say you're in Michigan and you have hit your volume limit for that brand, in checkout natively it's going to show you, hey, you can't place this order, you've hit your volume limit for this month. Here's a couple of ways that you could actually place that order though. Like if you have somebody else in your household who's of age, change your name in the checkout and that order will be legally able to be processed and sent to you. And then like worst case, reach out to our customer service team and we could help. But historically, wineries, it's all after the checkout. So order's been placed and then a compliance check gets run. So from a customer experience standpoint, not great, especially if the order can't go through. Then somebody's reaching out to you, then you have to navigate this whole thing. And then a lot of times it's, oh, let's just let the order go, which is not great either, because then you're sending out orders that aren't technically compliant. Hopefully that helped explain a little bit of the context and then also what the app does.
Yeah, sounds like a great space to be entering and being involved with. Well, I have to ask you, you start, from what you told me, you started your agency. I think you were still in college. Tell us a bit of how you got into this world. And I would be remiss not to ask, growing it to 55 brands, 45 team members, just paint the picture for us. How did you do all this?
So I actually worked at Drinks back in high school in like 2014 as a social media intern. And that's sort of where my entrepreneurial interest came out of. And then when I was in school, it more so was how do I start making money on the side that isn't necessarily like a full-time job. Also, I'm sitting in class, I'm on my computer, I'm bored. What can I do? How can I be out there and just sort of moving and shaking? So I actually took a class at USC. I can't remember what department. I think it was in the School of Engineering for some reason, but it was like a part of the digital entrepreneurship course, and it was around SEO and content. And the guy who was teaching it had started and sold his own agency and was doing other things. And we're going through the class, and I'm like, wow, like this is something that I can pick up very quickly. There's like so many resources online when it comes to SEO and content and digital marketing in general. So really just threw myself into that world and started reaching out, leveraging my @usc.edu email to get through all the spam filters to the people I was trying to connect with. Like, hey, let me work for you on the SEO and content side. I'll do it for free or I'll do it for super cheap. Start to build out some reviews and case studies. And in that moment, I didn't really think this was going to be an agency necessarily. It was more so just a side hustle more than anything. But eventually it got to a point where it seemed like there was a real opportunity here and that this was a growing space that was ripe for a little bit of disruption as well, because there were agencies that had grown up in the heyday of Facebook ads, and now they were 400, 500 people and starting to lose a little bit of that, not only quality control, but just being on the pulse of what's new and what's coming next. And so I was able to have a lot of success of sort of picking up almost the scraps, frankly, from these larger agencies when they didn't want to play in that like $25,000 to $5,000 a month retainer range. And so there was a lot of brands that were just starting out where I could come in and help give that full like marketing solution to. And then scaling was, looking back at it now, was challenging after we got to about 20 people, because the first 20 were like, for one, we were in person for the most part. Second was a lot of it was referral based. So like our first hires had friends who were in the space and wanted to do something sort of fun and be a part of building something versus maybe going the more like traditional corporate route at their school. But once the pandemic hit and we went virtual, and then once we sort of, the well had been tapped for the referral portion of things, so much came out of that where I had to figure out, how do we identify like a good culture fit? How do we identify who's actually going to be like a strong team member for Electriq. So that was probably one of the more challenging components. So I was just saying that one of the bigger challenges was after the referral well ran out, the changes that we had to make to our hiring process and structure to go about identifying like good talent, but that also fit with our team was one of the more challenging things. But I mean, really, the internet is your best friend on your entrepreneurial journey because you can just Google anything, and usually there's helpful resources, guides, some sort of YouTube video that'll walk you through whatever it is that you're trying to learn about or that you're encountering.
Can you talk to us a bit about the biz div? I'm looking at your team on LinkedIn. And it's like these are not team members in the Philippines. This is like US, UK team members. You're I assume paying pretty large salaries or wages here. So this is a really a big agency, and like you said, you had so many clients. What? Tell us just a little bit about that. Of how did you find brands that were a good fit for your services and that made sense for you guys on a profitability basis?
Yeah, I mean, that constantly changed and evolved over time, and it happened like very quickly because we were growing quickly. And so, who was right for us 6 months ago wasn't necessarily who was right for us in that moment. So, there was some internal like navigating that we had to do to make sure we were still servicing well the brands that were early adopters of us, but then also working on how we were now positioning ourselves as like an elite retention as a service agency, and we're not touching anything below a certain dollar amount, and we're not touching anything that's below a certain sort of like potential opportunity for us. I mean, when we first started, I would have said yes to literally anything, versus now we are in a position where that's very much not the case. And so that was one of the challenges that we are continuing as we are continuing to grow.
No, even just business development, even as referral relationships ran out. You mentioned the USC email. Like, I'm just obviously you guys were delivering results, and I'm sure that was getting you business. But also, just I'm always just curious of how did you get to 55 brands or whatever we said that was.
Yeah, I think the first 2 years was all like direct cold outreach for the most part. But then it got to a point where we were investing pretty heavily into our technology partner relationships, because as a retention focused agency, so much of what we do in the Shopify ecosystem is leveraging the best in class tools and technologies within that ecosystem to create these personalized customer experiences. And so whether it was Klaviyo or Attentive or Akendo or Gorgeous, like working with them was really the biggest unlock for us, getting brought in to co-sell deals with certain partners. So we're not even sourcing the lead, but we're getting brought in by a technology partner to help them win business and then ultimately win us business. And that's really where we were able to get from that like 20 team members to 40 team members. And the clients were much stronger, longer lasting. Same with the ones that were referred into us by like other clients as well. But that was really the biggest unlock, was investing in the ecosystem, and little things finally started to pay off, like the YouTube channel, all of the content and videos that we put together and rolled out there, focusing very specifically on like hyper targeted keywords, so that you're not getting 100,000 views, but the views that you are getting are extremely relevant and drive business. And even if it's not driving net new business, when somebody Googles you during your sales process, they're like, oh wow, look at this. Like, clearly they must know what they're talking about. They've got all this YouTube content here. Here's some press articles about them. Here's some mentions of case studies that they have with tech partners. All that third party sort of validation and credibility goes a long way. But it's not like you can do that overnight. And so we're definitely in a different position now for BizDev than we were early on. Early on, it was like, just please let me work for you and try and ignore the fact that I have no experience whatsoever.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you guys really figured it out quickly there. It's pretty impressive. I was going to ask about, sort of certifications of, Klaviyo or other certifications. And it sounds like it wasn't so much the certifications as just those partnerships of they wanted to grow, you wanted to grow. It was win-win in that respect, and also win-win-win for the clients as well. Or it sounds like maybe you were starting out with SEO, but then we're getting involved with, platforms and tools, and that really became a major engine for your growth. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. It definitely drives. It's the number one driver of business for us today. are those tech partner referrals.
How do you think about this now? You're getting involved with drinks and driving things there. It's like, how do you start when you're standing up a direct to consumer brand or really building out a marketing program? Give us a sense of your playbook and how you think about it.
Yeah, so I mean, historically, all of my experience has been with D2C, like e-commerce brands. But now being on the drink side, this is a software app. And luckily, I've had all this experience of working with like Klaviyo, Akendo, all the other aforementioned Shopify apps, and have close relationships with them. So they've been very helpful in guiding me and subsequently drinks through this process. Everything from how do you handle billing with Shopify to merchants for the app? How do you think about pricing? What do you think about when it comes to customer support? What do you think about when it comes to the website and the lead funnel and building out your various deal stages? So there's certain things that applied over from Electriq. There's certain things that applied over from working with e-commerce brands. But then there's just completely new stuff. Like, what are some of the things that I should be thinking about when it comes to our Shopify app listing on the App Store? I don't have any experience building and going to market with a Shopify app. So getting to tap into those resources and starting to learn again, which has been exciting for me because it's kind of back to like 2018, 2019 when I was starting Electriq and just diving in head first and trial by fire. Now it's a little bit different though, because it's the same ecosystem. A lot of the things translate over, and having those connections has been invaluable. That's basically how we got to this point.
Yeah. Are you looking at YouTube content again as a sort of content marketing channel or SEO channel for you guys?
Yeah, it's really about putting together enablement materials. So we started a Wine Online 101 series where we've already have 10 episodes now of me hosting with either tech partners or other people in the wine industry or other people on the drinks team, talking through everything from what you need to be worried about from a tax and compliance standpoint as a direct-to-consumer wine brand to best practices you should be thinking about for your e-commerce store. And all this content serves as multiple purposes, or like a ton of purposes. One is you can use it as an SEO play on YouTube. That's much more long-term, but that value is there. Second is put it into your customer's journey. So like you download the app. Okay, now you get an email. And then, look at all these resources that I can self-service myself with in order to leverage not only the app, but the Shopify ecosystem, because our app addresses a big pain point for wineries. But one of the biggest value adds is the fact that they're now getting to be on a best-in-class e-commerce platform. And so part of my job is to help them in my capacity as an agency and a Shopify Plus expert. This is what you should be thinking about now. Like, this is how you can go about aggregating zero-party data, and this is why it matters. And then this is what it looks like taking that and using it in your email and SMS flows. Because if you download Shopify and you download the Drinks app, you're only a third of the way there, in my opinion, in terms of what you could do with your direct-to-consumer brand. So really thinking about those education materials, because that content, especially the long form content, can be split up and diced into so many different things that once you have that, it starts to spiral. Another big thing that I'm focused on is our early adopters, putting them out there as sort of forward-thinking leaders in the D2C wine space, because for one, they are, but second, it's a lot different when they're saying it versus me saying it, because I'm coming to you on behalf of drinks, whereas these are third parties that have no incentivization whatsoever when it comes to the success of drinks. They're just more so interested in the success of the ecosystem as a whole. And so if they're saying, hey, I cut my costs by 50% by using the drink solution, and also now I get to experience the benefits of the Shopify ecosystem, and they start showing it to their winery friends, and that's where things can really start to accelerate, is once you have other people selling the solution for you.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And it sounds like you got started kind of in maybe traffic generation, and you've moved into customer lifetime value, customer life cycle. Talk to us a little bit about, that transition and just how you think about that, both for e-commerce brands and for drinks.com.
Yeah, I mean, I personally couldn't stand ads. There's just so much I felt like wasn't in my control because you're dealing with a black box algorithm, and sure, you can test and iterate and you can do all these different things, but it's just like a constant tinkering with something that I felt just for me working with a brand, I couldn't say with 100% certainty that I will be able to improve your cost per acquisition or your ROAS. You could say that, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, do you really know? I mean, you could run that next campaign and it could potentially fall flat. Whereas on the retention side, I know with 100% certainty, any brand that we get into their email and SMS accounts or get into their business, we will be able to help them improve retention and produce incremental gains. And that's because you're not dealing with this like black box algorithm. Sure, there's a ton of testing and there's a bunch of different things that go into it, but it just felt like I had way more control over that, and being able to leverage all the different like first party and zero party data points that we had to create these personalized experiences. Being in the CRM, you're also now sort of dictating the tech stack too. So, hey, maybe you should be looking at this for increasing AOV. Have you thought about doing this in your purchasing journey on the website? It's just way more fun for me personally.
Is the CRM Klaviyo when you're saying that, or even a separate?
Yeah, the Klaviyo, and then like on our side as an agency, and then with drinks we use HubSpot, which there's similarities between D2C e-commerce and CRM and more B2B like HubSpot style CRM, but there's also obviously some differences too.
Love it. Well, you're just such a skilled marketer. It's such a privilege to talk to you. I have to ask about the age thing a little bit. From my understanding, you kind of went right into entrepreneurship. I don't believe you've worked for other people or after college. It sounds like you kind of skipped that step. You know, what advice can you share with young people who are interested in taking that path? And can you just reflect on it a little bit of you created jobs instead of taking a job?
Yeah, I think if you are interested in potentially exploring this path, there's really there's two ways to do it. Either you could just like completely go for it, which is what I did, but I was lucky to have had the time in college to get it to a point where I could just go for it and be able to support myself. And also lucky enough to have found something that I was actually interested in, because I always knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial, but if I had not taken that class or had the experiences that I did, then I could have gotten a more traditional job and then still have been thinking about where do I go from here. I think the second path is go out into the workforce, start to build out your network, get experience in whatever industry it is, and then from there you can use that as a launching pad to go and do your own thing. So I think there's pros and cons to both. The pros of what I did is that I actually didn't have any preconceptions around how things were supposed to be done, and so coming at it like with a completely blank slate was definitely valuable. There were some cons to that as well too, when it came to building out like organizational processes and structure, but that's where mentors can come into play. But I think when you're young, it's the time to do it. I mean, it's just me and my dog. There's nobody relying on me. I don't have a family of 10 that I need to worry about. So failure has much less, I guess, downsides at this stage in your life. And so you can always, I mean, there's never a bad time, I think, to make the entrepreneurial leap, but being at a young age is a good one. And then just like lean into your strengths too, because we had no experience. Like our whole thing was, well, why do you want to work with somebody who's been doing email marketing for 20 years? If you like, email marketing changes every 6 months. You need to be an expert in today's email marketing, not 20 years ago. And so we almost use that as we try to flip it into a pro rather than being a con.
Yeah. How do you recommend, e-commerce and other marketers sharpen the saw and keep up to date? What's been the way that you guys have kept on the cutting edge like that, and how can other people do that too?
Sign up for a few, not a ton, but just like a few actually relevant newsletters. And even if you only glance at like the TLDR just to get that quick snippet of news, that's important. By being so in sync with our tech partners as well, like we're very much so on the cusp of beta programs and new things that are rolling out. So that's very helpful. But all of your standard tech partners are going to have email marketing lists that you can sign up for, and they'll send out product updates and stuff like that. And so I'd almost even, I mean, I don't have this, but now that I'm thinking about it, like create a separate email that you go sign up for all these things and like just get your weekly digest every once in a while of what's going on. And then just start doing stuff. Most of what I learned was just trial by doing.
Learn by doing. That's great. Well, Brandon, I hope we can have you back on and get some more updates from you. You're just a wealth of knowledge, and you've already had a lot of success at your young age, so it's just awesome to see. Who's a good person to connect with you, and where can they find you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, just Brandon Amoroso. You could also go to brandonamoroso.com and reach out to me there. Happy to chat through anything, business, entrepreneurial related, e-commerce, or otherwise.
Well, Brandon, thank you for coming on and sharing what's working in e-commerce.
Thank you for having me.